Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to start with the tracts of the spinal cord. In this part, in today's sessions, I am going to discuss the white matter classification, and then I'm going to tell you about the ascending tracts, their origin, pathway, and termination, and lastly, regarding the function of those pathways of the tracts. Now, first of all, leading to the basic anatomy. Till now, you had covered about the the sectional. You have just covered the external feature, external morphology of the spinal cord, and after that, you had also covered the this transverse section of the spinal cord, where you can see a butterfly-shaped structure in which we are having the inner H-shaped gray matter and the outer outlining cellular nuclear mass, that is your white matter. So what is happening here? So here you can see this is the anterior median fissure and this is the posterior median sulcus. Just lateral to this fissure there is the anterolateral sulcus, and when we are just going posteriorly, just nearer to the this dorsal horn, we are having the posterolateral sulcus. In between the posterolateral sulcus and the posterior median sulcus, we are having posterior intermediate sulcus. So now, if I just divide this region into different parts, okay, so before going to that, I just want to say here that this is the gray matter, and in the gray matter, we are having the dorsal horn, which is meant for the sensory functions, and we are having the ventral horn, which is meant for the motor function, and it is going to provide the motor nerves, basically the motor part of the spinal nerve. Now, please look at here. Your dorsal rootlet of dorsal root of the spinal nerve is just coming, and this dorsal root of the spinal nerve is just coming from in the form of like 7 to 8 rootlets, and in a similar fashion, we are having the ventral rootlets which are coming. So these are going to mix with each other to form the spinal nerve. This dorsal root net, before coming and going to mix with spinal nerve, it is going to give enlargement in the form of the dorsal root ganglion that is going to be present here. So that's why it is more or less important in the case of the ascending tract, because it is acting as a primary relay center. So I'll be just discussing that also in the later on parts. Apart from these two parts of the gray matter, we are having one extra lateral horn in the case of the thoracic spine. Sorry, in the case of the thoracic spinal cord. Now moving on to the white matter classification, if I say the white matter which is present in between the anterior median fissure up till the anterolateral sulcus, it is going to be called as your anterior funiculus. The white matter in between the anterior lateral sulcus up till your posterior lateral sulcus is going to be called as your lateral funiculus, and the white matter which is just going to be present in between the posterior median sulcus and your posterior lateral sulcus, that is going to be called as your posterior funiculus. Now why it is white? It is white because of presence of the neurites. Now neurites are comprised of axons and dendrites, or you can say that the nerve fibers, neuroglia cells, and the blood vessels. So that is going to be present here. Apart from that, we are going to see there are number of the fibers which are responsible for the different tracts. So there are sensory fibers, there are motor fibers, there are association fibers, but my point of view, so my main aim to discuss is regarding the sensory fibers here today. So this is again to show you the division. This is your posterior funiculus, this is lateral funiculus, and this is the anterior funiculus. Okay, I think, and one thing I just want to add here. Please see this. There is some part. Okay, this is the your fissure. In between the fissure and your gray matter, we are having very small amount of remaining white matter. So this white matter is called as the anterior white commissure. This is called as the anterior white commissure. So this is also very much important, because whenever there is crossing over of the fibers, so it is happening through this region. Okay, the crossing over of the fiber, which is known as a decussation, it is happening from this region. Now moving to the tract. So before directly moving to the ascending tract, I just want to add some points regarding the definition of the tracts. Tracts are the specific group of the neurons which are originating from one place and they are terminating to the specific another place to perform a specific one kind of similar function. Okay, they are going to originate for a specific function and they are having a similar kind of course. They are going to terminate at the a specific site in the higher centers, maybe higher centers, maybe from higher to lower centers, so it just depends how the different number of tracks are just functioning. Okay, so this is how they are working. So starting with the tracks, if I say the blue color tracks are your ascending tracks and your red color tracks which you are showing are your descending tracks. In the case of the ascending tracks, we are having the number of the tracks on the basis of the funiculus. If I say, let me start from the posterior funiculus. In the posterior funiculus, we are having the two parts of the ascending tracts, that is your fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. Please, for right now, please just look at this tracts only. We will discuss their functions, their structure later on. Okay, so this is the fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus. Now moving on to the lateral funiculus. In the lateral funiculus, we are having the three major, ascending tracts. That is your on the lateral boundary. We are having anterior spinocerebellar tract. On just posterior to that, there will be the posterior spinocerebellar tract. And in between this region, we are having the lateral spinothalamic tract. We are having the lateral spinothalamic tract. Apart from that, in the anterior, funiculus. In the anterior funiculus, we are having the anterior spinothalamic tract. Now, in some books, this complete spinothalamic tract is shown in one single patch. Okay, but for making it more easy to understand because of their functional aspect of these tracts, we had just divided that into the two aspects. That is the anterior spinothalamic tract, which is present in the anterior funiculus, and the part of the spinothalamic tract which is present in the lateral funiculus as a lateral spinothalamic tract. Apart from that, we are again having very some smaller tracts that are your spinotectal tracts, spino-reticular tract, spino-olivary tract. I'm not going to detail these tracts right now because that is going to be discussed once you are going to read with your completing with uh, brainstem and the sectional anatomy there. So we will be discussing that later on. So now moving to the ascending tract. So before moving, I just want to add on from where actually the sensation is starting. Okay, so it is just the sensations are going to be received from the receptors. Okay, there are a number of receptors. There are thermoreceptors for sense of heat and cold. There are Meissner's corpuscles for sense of the touch. There are the nociceptors which are going to sense the pain. There are the Pacinian corpuscles which are going to sense the pressure. So this is how these are present in the dermis part of the skin. So uh, different number of the sensations are going to be taken up by the different number of your receptors. Apart from these, there are also some more receptors, that is your Golgi tendon organ, muscular receptors, mechanoreceptors, free nerve endings. So um, uh, these are certain sensory parts or the sensory receptors which are going to take. Now, before moving to one-on-one to the different number of the tracts, I just want to tell you about the lateral spinothalamic tract, the function of the different tracts. Basically, the lateral spinothalamic tract is responsible for pain and the thermal sensation. The anterior spinothalamic tract is responsible for the crude touch, non-discriminative touch, pressure, tickle, itches. The in the case of the dorsal column, we are having the fasciculus gracilis and the fasciculus cuneatus. These are responsible for the fine touch, two-point discrimination, vibration, and conscious proprioception. Now I'll be discussing that how these both are different later on. In the case of the anterior spinocerebellar tract, they are responsible for the unconscious proprioception, for the gross movements, and the posterior spinocerebellar tract, they are responsible for the unconscious proprioception but for the fine movements. So I'll be discussing that too in the later on slides. So here you can see again, this is the gracile. fasciculus gracile, fasciculus cuneatus, the posterior spinocerebellar tract, the anterior spinocerebellar tract, and here please see here they are just represented spinothalamic tract as a single entity, but actually for your purpose we are just going to divide it into the two parts. This image has been taken from the Petasta's neuroanatomy. Okay, after that we are just moving on to now the spinothalamic tract. So this is the lateral one and this is the anterior one. Now we are going to see the pathway, or the we are just going to trace up this tract. So from the receptor level it is going to start from the free nerve endings, your nociceptors. Nociceptors are like A delta and the C fibers, very specifically if I'm saying. So from where the nerves are going, these neurons are going to be taking up the pathways up till the your dorsal root ganglion. So they are going to relay at the dorsal root ganglion, and from where from here the information is going to pass up till the spinal cord, whether it is in lumbar region or the cervical region. Okay, so from here onwards there will be the second order neuron that is going to be starting from the substantia gelatinosa. That is going to be starting from the substantia gelatinosa. So from here onwards, please see, actually this decussation is happening at the anterior gray commissure basically. So from here onward, it is going to decussate to the opposite side, and it is going to be ascending upwards. So from here onwards, it is going to move upwards, and it is going to pass through the brainstem in the form of the spinal lemniscus. We will be discussing that all in detail when we are going to see the brainstem and the sectional anatomy of the brainstem. Then these neuronal neurons are going to end at the thalamus. So there is a specific region in the thalamus, that is the ventroposterolateral nucleus, VPL, or it is also known as the VPL nucleus. There are a number of nucleus which are present at the thalamus, so this is one such nucleus. After that, from here onwards, this information is passed through the thalamic radiations. Now what is thalamic radiation? These are again set of the neurons which are just going to be connecting or interlinking the thalamus to the higher centers. So from here onwards, it is going to give supply to not supply, basically it is going to pass the information through this thalamic radiations to the your primary sensory cortex. Primary sensory cortex is also known as the area 312. It is primary sensory cortex is also known as the area 312, as the Brodmann's number area are just concerning. Okay, so that's how it is going to be present. In the case of the anterior spinothalamic tract, there is a slight difference because of the function. So receptors are going to be your Pacinian corpuscles. So rest the majority pathway, if I just discuss, it is going to first order neurons are just going to relay at the your dorsal root ganglion, and from here onwards, and there is a trick here, please just try to look at it. Is just not passing or crossing to this opposite side at the very same level. Actually, in the case of the anterior spinothalamic tract, the fibers are just moving superiorly, like 3-4 segments superiorly, and then it is going to decussate, and then in the form of the spinal lemniscus at the level of brainstem, it is going to end at the your thalamus part, again the ventroposterolateral nucleus of the thalamus. And from here onward, it is going to give in the form of the thalamic radiations to the area 312, to the primary sensory cortex. Now see, there is a very slight space which is just present. You had just seen the different number of the rex lamina. There are like 10 rex lamina which are just present in the gray matter. So please just see here. In the case we are having a slight smaller part which is just remaining, which is more posterior to the first rex lamina, that is your Lizard tract. So it is just helping in this through this tract of posterolateral tract of Lizard. There are number of branchings of the neurons which are just coming here. That branchings are going to transfer the information either to one or two segments superiorly or to inferiorly. So this is how the information is spreaded out to the different segments of the spinal cord. Now we move on to the, your fasciculus gracilis and the fasciculus cuneatus. In the case of the fasciculus gracilis and the fasciculus cuneatus, um, say, these are going to carry out the different sensations which are just regarding the muscular sensations, or if I say, please give me a second. So this in the case of the dorsal column, we are having the two types of the pathways, that is your fasciculus gracilis and the fasciculus cuneatus. Now, fasciculus gracilis is more like medially lying, tract, and the fasciculus cuneatus is like, more laterally lying. So, how it is just representing that? So, please just see there. The fasciculus, gracilis is going to collect the information just below the T6 level. So, it is going to be, taking the informations like, proprioceptive information from the different regions of the trunk and the lower limb, whereas your fasciculus cuneatus is just taking the information from the upper limb and the trunk, which is just present superior to the T6 level. Now, here I just want to add that throughout this pathway, whenever they are just going to end at the, this second order neurons, sorry, the first order neurons are just traveling a single pathway, and from there they are going to end at the level of the, medulla, at the nucleus gracilis medially and the nucleus cuneatus laterally. So from here, these neurons are going to collectively called as the medial lemniscus. They are going to form a medial lemniscus, and then this medial lemniscus is just passing to the thalamus. These second order neurons are passing to the thalamus, and from the thalamus again the similar kind of fashion, these sensations are going to be carried up to the primary sensory cortex. Now see, the decussation is, this sensory decussation is happening at the level of the medulla in the form of the your medial lemniscus. Okay, so please just make a note to this slide as well. Now after that, please just see that, we are having the posterior spinocerebellar tract and the anterior spinocerebellar tract. So these are again, receptors are just the muscle spindles, the joint sensation, the muscular sensation, the tendon organs. So these are the different structures which are going to be responsible. Then we are having the first order neurons. There will be the collateral branches of the sending tracts. So again, they are going to relay at the dorsal root ganglion, and through the, your fourth, fifth, and sixth, basically your Clark's column and the nucleus dorsalis. Basically, these are the Rex laminus, different name. And from here, your second order neurons are going to start, and then be specific. Here, what is happening? They are going to end cerebellar cortex, not the cerebrum. Okay, so that's the difference between the nucleus gracilis one. Actually, these are also carrying the proprioceptive sensation. For what is the function? Basically, they are going to be responsible for maintaining the balance and the coordination of the movements and the joints, etc. Okay, so that is going to be happening. Okay, so please just see, if I say the posterior spinocerebellar tract is just following the similar kind of the pathway, but your anterior spinocerebellar tract, it is just initially it is decussating, and at the level of the pons again it is going to decussate to just come on the similar side or the ipsilateral side of the cerebellar hemisphere. So if I say there is any issue with the right side, so whole of the information is going to present inside the right side of the cerebellar hemisphere. So that is about the major tracts. In the case of the, these are the smaller tracts. These are going to be discussed when you are going to read about the, the sectional anatomy of brainstem. So this is the spinotectal tract, responsible for the spino-visual reflexes, movement of the head and eye in response to source of stimulation. The spino-reticular tract, it is going to be responsible for the reticular formation, level of consciousness, and your pain perception. We are having the spino-olivary tract, it is going to, just convey the cutaneous and the proprioceptive information to cerebellum. We are having the spinocervicothalamic pathway, which is going to take the information of the, hair movements and like pinch and pressure thermal stimuli. So this is how it is going to be responsible. So here you can see that this is the spino-reticular tract. So I just want to add some points regarding the spino-reticular tract here. So please just see, it is just giving off twigs. The branches are given at the level of your throughout the level of your brainstem. So in this, the at certain occasions, at certain emergency situations, there is a need of brainstem stimulation. So for that, passage of a regular passage of information is going to be needed. So this is the circuitry, one of the major things which are happening. So that's all for the today. So thank you for attending.